This morning, I was looking at something that was I think it was in the New York Times, about how like burnout has become the norm for parents, and that's just what's expected. And that's not really amazing news. It's not amazing news for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons, especially when you have a kiddo with special needs, where you have a lot of new stuff on board, is that you take a lot of learning, right? You are doing a lot of stuff and it's not easy. And so when we find balance and we work towards creating some level of balance, not only does it save mom and dad, right, from, mental health, issues that can come along with parenting burnout, it also lets your energy show up differently for the way that you're going to parent your kiddos. And that's even more important when you have an intervention on board. Because there's other people who are a part of your parenting, right? Like you've got a team of people who have ideas and procedures, and that's a ton to balance, but it's also a ton to communicate. And so by being able to fill up your own cup and being able to embody your you-ness, you're going to be able to not only help yourself to feel a little bit more like yourself, create some more balance with this thing, this ABA intervention or any other interventions your child or family might be using at this time. You're going to be able to be more of yourself, and you're going to model that's an appropriate thing to do for your kiddos, so that as they grow up, they're going to be able to see how you've managed to balance, how you've managed to be able to see all of the things that are important in your life and create space for all of them, and learn that that's not only okay, but possible, which is exciting. And the reason why I wrote that book is because there's so many strategies to be able to actually do that, even though it feels really far away. And you're going to need a piece of paper and a pen, or if you're on your computer, a Word doc is perfect, because we're going to be doing some tangible strategies today that are part of like the first chapter of my book, to be able to get you started so that you can start seeing the strategies that you can do this, that this is possible. So let's quickly talk about what is balance. And we already talked a little bit about how it helps you, but balance is when you are finding the stuff that's important to you, right? And you're getting it all kind of put in your life. And what's challenging a lot of the times, right, going into the barriers to balance, is that we try to pack all of it in that's important, and we don't have the bandwidth for it, right? We just don't. Like, there's not enough hours in the day, there's not enough energy, there's not enough coffee to fuel that. And so when we have, like, I'm just going to use two things as an example, but it's more complicated than that. When we have two things that are really important to us, it feels uncomfortable when they bash together, when they're competing for our time and energy. And so finding the balance line can be a little bit uncomfortable, and it's making space for that discomfort and understanding that it's a bit of a journey, right? It's not going to be 100% achievable. Now, before you click off, because I just said balance isn't 100% achievable, I want to say that we as humans are always raising the bar. And there's some mechanisms in our brain, if we get into, like neuroscience and stuff, that has actually kept us alive, and it's really beneficial. But at the same time, it doesn't give us a whole lot of space to acknowledge the good, to celebrate when we're doing it right, because we're constantly changing the bar for ourselves. We can't actually reach a destination of balance. And it's something that we have to learn to train ourselves to do. And that's what some of this is about, is learning to create habits in our mind the same way that we might create habits in our external environment, like brushing our teeth or, tying our shoes. For most of us as adults, those are probably things that we don't think about anymore. You might think about them with your kiddos, and that might even be a program that one of your kiddos is working on. And so that shaping process can happen in actions. So what we're going to do is think about how we can shape our thoughts and feelings in our brain and create new habits around that, which means some stuff, right? So it means that we don't have to take every single thought we have at face value. It means that we aren't our thoughts. One of a really easy strategy to start off with is the noticing that we say things like, I am angry, or I am overwhelmed. And that implies that we are our feelings and our thoughts. But what we can try to reframe it a little bit is to say, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And that means subtly different. It's not, I am this person, this observing self isn't angry. You're having the feeling of anger. You're having the feeling of overwhelm, the same way that you can have the feeling of happy, the same way that you can have the feeling of sad. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't process our emotions, because that's absolutely the case, but making space for our uncomfortable thoughts and feelings to inform us by separating ourselves a little bit from them. One of my favorite analogies from the people who I've learned from is the idea of a paper. So if we pretend my hand, or here, actually, I've got a piece of paper. If we have this paper, and on this side is our problem or our challenge, right? I don't know if you can see that, but I just wrote problem. And on the other side is the solution. If we have the problem side so close to our face that that's all we can see, we can't notice that the solution's back. So the idea is to take a step back, start to observe our thoughts, start to notice the way that we think, so that way we can get some perspective on if it's helpful or not helpful. So let's start thinking about how we can put that into good use. We already talked a little bit about seeing the good as it exists now to train up habits in our mind, which is what we're going to be practicing and what I'm going to actually assign you a little bit of homework on at the end of this webinar. And that is going to look like, at the end, when we get there, I'm going to walk you through a process of intention setting journaling. Now, if you're not someone who already has a journaling practice, this can feel a little daunting, because it's just another thing that I'm asking you to do. And that's actually one of the chief complaints when I start working with families is I'm just giving them another thing to do. And since I'm giving it to you as a parent, that feels more overwhelming than when we do something for our kiddo. And there's some mindset work around that. And that's part of why this type of intervention can be so powerful, because you as the parent are an interventionist, right? You're the chief generalization officer. You're the chief communication and goal setter, right? Your BCBA is really a consultant for what you and your family want to create with your what is going to make you and your child the most comfortable in your family life. And so when we get to the point where you by yourself are getting super crystal clear and empowered, and as well as having like a really practice separating from the hard stuff that is having a kiddo with disabilities, not just the hours and the tired and the tangible stuff, but also the mindset, right, around maybe life looking different than you envisioned it, and being able to acknowledge that plays a part in your decision making, because we've taken a step back and looked at it. And that's like a whole chapter in my book. We're talking about, basically this is chapter 1 that we're going to go over today, but that's kind of chapter 3. So you might get a little bit of experience in that and diving into those uncomfortable things. But the start is to just notice how your brain works and how all of your judgments, all of your feelings, all of your perceptions and the rules and the things that brought you to become you might interact with your thoughts, might interact with your actions, and dictate success, right? They kind of dictate where you're going. And for me, success is whatever is in alignment to your values and your goals, right? So it doesn't have to be a set thing. So let's get clear on that. Let's make it happen today. So the first one is to identify your values. And since I'm an acceptance and commitment therapy BCBA, values are a really big deal. So when we talk about this journey of life a little bit, I like to sometimes think of it as a roadmap, and the values are kind of like a compass. So a value can be kind of, it is like a moral guidance word. So you could use the word kindness, like you value kindness, or you value communication, or maybe you value education, right? There's a lot of really beautiful values out there, and knowing which ones are yours and what are your top priority ones are going to inform your goals. But it's also going to be what you do when you start pinging these choices and these feelings off, right? You're going to bounce them off your values to make sure that your choices, your thoughts and feelings are in service of your values, which are in service of your goals. And we start moving you in that direction. Values in this metaphor of a roadmap is like west. You can always go west. Right now, you can walk, or you can get in your car, or even if you run into the water, like I'm in Washington State, and I'm actually very blessed today to be near the water. You could physically get on a boat, or you could go swimming to get west, right? And then when you get west, you can continue to go west. You can go all the way around the world and still go more west than you are now. And that's what values are. You can always get a different facet of kindness, or a different facet of communication, a little bit more, a little bit different, a little bit of an application change. You're never a fully embodied communicator or a fully perfect kindness, right? There's always more that you can do. And the same thing is with your values. And so it's always going to be your direction and your guidance. So that's one thing that I like to start off with. And really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can do our first activity. So here's my little materials thing, and I believe that these are going to be emailed to you so that you can go ahead and revisit this. Here's just the definition of values that I kind of shared with you. And then here is a big list of values. And what I'm going to have you do, and I'm going to actually set a timer, and I want you to actually do this, is look through right now all of this list and pick your top 10. I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes, and you can see I've got like a little thing here. So if you've got a pen and paper, or if you've got a Google Doc, go ahead and go through and pick them. And we're only going to pick 10 for one reason. When everything is important, nothing's important. We don't have the bandwidth for that, right? Like I talked about in the beginning. So going through and really honing in on what's important to you is going to inform your goals, which is going to inform how we get started. And it's going to inform how we make balance happen for you. So what will probably happen is that a lot of these are going to resonate, and that's great. Go ahead and put them down. That's good information. But then just start narrowing down what is most important. I'm going to guess that there's some synonyms, and just pick the one that goes with you. This doesn't have to be perfect, and you can always come back to this later. So I'm going to actually set a timer right now, and I'd like you to go ahead and write down or narrow down into your top 10. Good luck. I'll see you in 2 minutes. All right, just about 30 seconds left, and no worries if you don't finish completely. You can screenshot this so that you can keep it with you, or if you signed up with your email address, I think we can send it out to you at the end. It's also in my book. Cool. Time's up. Like I said, don't worry if you didn't finish completely. That's okay. So now we've got a working list of values, which is exciting because, like I said, this is going to be part of our roadmap. The next part that we're going to do is we're going to work at evaluating the 12 areas of life. And I call this kind of a values embodiment. And this is another exercise that we do a few times in my book, but this is going to be for you. So it's not your kiddo's value embodiment. It's not the way that they're experiencing their life. This is for how you're experiencing your life. Because like I said, this is about balance and being able to create a life for you. Because I believe, and the data suggests very strongly, that the more grounded a parent is, the more successful the child is. So my tagline is, when parents are supported, children thrive. So just think about you here. This first part is these 12 areas of life, and I'll read them off for you. But what I'm going to ask you to do is give a rating from 1 to 10 on how important each one is for you. 1 being it's not so important, not at all. And then 10 being this is really one of the most important parts. And it doesn't matter. It's not what you think should be important. It's what is actually, oops, I don't know why that's going off. I apologize. What's actually important to you. So family, friends, parenting, romance, personal development, fun and recreation, mental and physical health, community and society, career, finances, environment, and spirituality. I'm going to set a 1-minute timer so that you can have a minute to just quickly rate these. Like I said, there's no right or wrong. So go ahead and get started. Okay. So here's the kicker. Now let's go ahead and look at those same areas of life. And you can even just put a second column because you're going to rate the same ones. And we're going to rate them this time for how much time and effort this area of life gets for you. So go ahead back through these same ones and rate how much time and effort, 1 being not very much time at all, and 10 being a large amount of time or effort. And you can think about it across a week or a month, because sometimes we don't access all of these in, one day. But whatever is valuable to you is important. So just go with your gut. And I'm going to set another little timer here. So go for it. Cool. There's our timer. So now you're going to notice that there's probably some that don't really meet up. So if there are 2 or more points different, that's probably a really good place to consider for a balanced evaluation. And there's some different ways to look at that. If they are in balance, like just 1, or 2, depending on how you feel about it, and your gut is correct, whatever your gut tells you is correct. So just trust that. That might be a really good place to look for strategies if they're pretty close or they're the same, for how it could look like and feel balanced to you. I do, even though maybe you haven't met very many BCBAs who really like meditations and journaling and stuff like this, I use acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a part of ABA. And that level of mindfulness is what we're going for here. So if we can pull strategies from where we're rocking and rolling unapologetically, kind of without judgment in that detached state, then woohoo, we already know a little bit of information and we don't necessarily need as much intervention. And we already have strategies to fall on. If you're in a situation where something is really important to you on that first rating and it's not getting nearly the same amount of time and effort, right? That's something to consider. We might want to put a little bit more time into that. A lot of the time when I work with people who are reaching, burnout and who are interested in more balance because they probably don't have it, things like fun, personal development. Sometimes for parents, it's career, especially if you're the parent who does the majority of the child care tasks, or is the one going to the therapies. I know in my family, I was the one kind of tasked with managing therapy and doctor's appointments and whatnot. So that, ate into some of my career time. And that was good until it wasn't, right? And only we know where that line is. And this is just a tool to kind of find it. And then the other way is that there could be something that has an importance value that is getting more time and effort than the importance value. That's not to say that it's not important. All of these things are important to you and they're part of a full life and they deserve a place. And so we're just trying to figure out what is going to help get that place to feel, right? Because this isn't just about actions, this is about feeling most correct for you and for your unique you-ness embodiment. I use that word you-ness, like YOU-NESS a lot, because I think it means what is your individuality, and what that means to you. And that's what I want to cultivate. And that's why I use all these plants is because we're cultivating that you-ness, that individuality, and what it means for you to have the life you want to live, even though it's hard, even though it's scary. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I felt that one there. So the next part here is, what do we do with that? At the beginning, I spoke a little bit about getting really clear about what it is we want in life. And it's not just, actions and, sometimes we have goals that are tied to achievement. So maybe I just got off the phone with some other BCBAs who I'm working with to be able to embody some of these things. And so for them, there was work-life balance and finances and graduating, getting their certificate and things. So one of them wasn't certified yet. And those types of big things. And so for you as a parent, it might be this goal for your kiddo. It might be getting into therapy with your kiddo, and that as soon as this is achieved, then it'll be better. But as we talked about at the beginning, we change our bar all the time without noticing we change our bar. So as soon as we get that goal, then we just pick another thing. That's really challenging for us. And so we kind of skip the part where we have what we want. And so now what I want to do is think about, from here right now, what is it that you want? And I want you to pick a time frame that feels achievable for you. So it might be 6 months, it might be 3 months, it might be 1 year, it might be 3 years. And I want you to paint what is your really ideal life. Maybe even pick like just a day in the life, and we're going to journal on it. And I'm going to give you a longer time to journal this time. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. So that way you can really write it down. And I don't want to just see, actions. I want to see feelings. I want to know how you're going to feel about this thing. So if you're waking up in the morning before your kiddo does, and you're having 20 minutes by yourself to make your coffee in peace and quiet, which is a really big goal of mine. How do you feel about that? How does that make you feel? For me, that would make me feel peaceful. That would make me feel calm. That would make me feel fortified for the running of the bulls that happens when my 4-year-old wakes up. Things like that. And so go through a day in the life of your ideal future, even if it feels inachievable right now. That's okay. That's okay. Dream big here. And write it down. Actually write all of it down if you can. So I'm going to go ahead and set that timer for the 4 minutes, and I'll see you in a minute. So please actually write it down. And I guess I forgot to mention that this is about like with a balanced life, right? Like you have all of those ideas of where your life is out of balance and what your values are. So those things should inform this journaling. And if this feels hard, that's okay too. Just keep coming back and keep showing up and keep trying. The timer will go off and it'll be done. And those other things that you have on your mind, we will get back to. We've got just a minute and a half left, and you're doing a really great job. And I know that this can stir up some emotions, and that's okay. That's okay. We can sit with those emotions and we can allow them to guide us in our future. Maybe even take note if you're writing something that's really meaningful to you and it feels inachievable or it's scary or you feel like you shouldn't want it, just make a note of that. That's part of this cycle too, is observing the way that we think, observing the judgments that we have and allowing them to exist. And they can give us information towards moving in the direction of what we want if we let them. Just 30 seconds more. So if you haven't already, start getting to the end of your day and thinking about you putting your head on your pillow and the reflection of this beautiful day. So that's the last activity. You did a really, really good job. And again, you can always do this again. I usually encourage people to do this frequently because what we want changes so frequently. And now we're going to get to the fourth step, which is what you're going to take with you out into your real life. And that's intention setting journaling. And so what that is when you take some of these things that you came up with in your ideal life, in your ideal journaling, ping them off of your values embodiment. Use all of this to create goals, and not just tangible goals, but goals of feeling. And those are the ones I want you to focus on. Is that what was it that you were feeling when those things happened? Because what's so cool and so powerful is that you can probably tap into feeling those things now. There are absolutely parts of your day where you are experiencing the feelings that achieving those goals that you had and being and experiencing that ideal life are happening for you now. And so that's what I want you to do is list out one of those feelings, maybe at the beginning of the day. And then at the end of the day, in your journal, write down how you experience that. Now, it's not going to feel intuitive at the beginning. It might take some creative reframing. And so reframing might be where, like let's say you have a goal of your kiddo following directions the first time, and that isn't happening. That's like a 0% thing happening. And you notice that your kiddo follows directions, maybe on the third time, or maybe that what is going to make that feel for you. What does it feel like when your kiddo follows directions? And maybe you feel that feeling in another spot, right? And we can take the focus off the thing and find it somewhere else. And so that way we can start cultivating, noticing, giving weight to, purposefully, intentionally, mindfully, give more space for that thing that you want to feel, and write it down as evidence. And as we write it down, because when you write things down, not only can you review it and create like this file to look at later, you're also able to create new neural pathways in your brain, so that as you get started, maybe the first 2 or 3 days, this feels uncomfortable and you feel like you're really pulling at straws to make it happen. But then on the 4th or 5th day, you start noticing that it's happening on its own, and you start seeing examples in your environment of what you want to be feeling. And maybe you even reframe one in the moment on like day 7, where you're experiencing something that feels yucky. You notice the thoughts because you've got practice with your journaling, observing how you're thinking and separating from that judgment portion or the I am feeling. And you can see a way where you can invite in the feeling that you want to have, even in a spot where you didn't notice it before. And that is changing your reality. That is shifting your mindset and your perspective to be looking for that which you desire instead of that which you lack. And it shifts everything. It makes it so that I've just got goosebumps even just saying that. This is one of my favorite practices. It makes it so that in an environment where you were not seeing it, your subtle body language reinforces what you want to see in your gestures, in your vocabulary choices, in your facial expressions, and that cues the people around you, including your family, including your little ones. And it sets you up to find that which you want to see, because your brain is now looking for that. It's looking for what you want instead of what you don't have. I'm guessing we've all experienced where you notice something that you don't have and you see more of it. You see more examples of it. The same thing is with a classic psychology one of like the yellow Jeep or whatever. If I tell you about yellow Jeeps right now, you're probably, and you take it and you think about it like, oh, yellow Jeeps are dope. You're probably going to see more yellow Jeeps just because you're attending to yellow Jeeps, whereas before they could have just continued to drive past. The same thing is going to happen with that feeling that you want. We just have to start creating the habit, and that's what intention setting journaling is. So again, start at the beginning of the day, choose the feeling that is informed by all of those activities that we just did. And at the end of the day, find an example, no matter how hard it takes it might be really challenging the first day, but it does get easier. No matter how long, no matter how much effort, find a way that you felt that feeling today. And then find it again and again and again. And I would encourage you to try this intention setting journaling for 21 days. And then you're going to be seeing that feeling and you're going to be finding new opportunities to create it. And then you're going to be switching the way that you live your life. And that is going to have wide impact. I know that we're starting to run low on time here, but it's going to have an impact because it's going to help you create that balance. If it feels uncomfortable, right? We need to go back to our why, go back to that ideal life, go back to those values, go back to your goals, because this hard work that you're doing, experiencing the discomfort of reframing your habit forming brain is worth it. And it won't last for forever, right? The discomfort won't last for forever because you're building a new habit. Just like if you were exercising, like the discomfort doesn't last for forever. You get to a new stamina point, and the same thing happens with your habits. So why, right? At the very beginning, we talked about when you build balance, you're going to not only help your own mental state, but you're going to show up differently in ABA therapy. You're going to show up differently in the programs for your kiddo, and you're going to model what's an appropriate balance for your own children in the future. And that's powerful. The data says it's powerful. And when you do those things, it helps your kiddos' therapeutic outcomes because you're showing up differently. So again, I'm going to go ahead and encourage you guys to do that for 21 days. Just get started with the practice. You can do it 100 times over with any feeling. You can extrapolate it out past parenting as well to any of those other parts of life. Whatever feels right for you probably is, but it's important to get you there because it's going to feel good. And it's not just for you. Sometimes us parents have a hard time making decisions for us, just for us, and we feel that selfishness. This is worth it because it's not just for you if that's a thing for you. But if that's not a thing for you, this is a really good strategy anyway. And I hope that you get the opportunity to try this out. Again, that's just kind of chapter 1 of my book. And then there's 7 days in that book. So I hope that you get the opportunity to check that out, as well as the offerings that Yourlearner has for you and your family. I don't know if we can take questions on this platform, but my Instagram handle is Mindfully Mallory, and you're welcome to find me there and DM me with any questions. I'd be happy to be available for that. So that concludes my presentation for today.
So yeah, thank you very much, Mallory. And thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you. I had so much fun.